In the vast landscape of Hindu mythology, Shiva stands as a figure both fierce and serene, both detached and deeply involved. Known as the Destroyer, his name does not suggest chaos, but transformation. Shiva clears the way for new beginnings by ending what no longer serves. As one of the Trimurti, alongside Brahma the creator and Vishnu the preserver, Shiva exists not just as an aspect of divinity, but as the eternal itself. He is formless, and yet wears many forms. The meditating sage, the cosmic dancer, the fierce warrior. His symbols, ashes, crescent moon, serpent, and trident, are not mere decorations but keys to understanding the balance between life and death, motion and stillness. Shiva is not a single form, but the rhythm behind all forms. Long ago, as the gods settled into their roles and the cosmos unfolded, Shiva chose the mountaintops over palaces. He lived in solitude on the Himalayas, his body smeared with ash, his hair matted in long coils, his silence as deep as space. Snakes curled around his neck, a tiger skin lay beneath him, and the sacred bull Nandi stood guard. He had no kingdom, no wealth, and no need for praise. Yet his very presence altered reality. Some feared him, others misunderstood him, but the wise recognized a truth. Shiva's stillness was not absence. It was a power so vast it held the stars in balance. In that quiet ascetic sat the pulse of transformation, and around him swirled the secrets of time and existence. Parvati, the goddess of divine energy, sought Shiva not for romance, but for cosmic balance. She was Shakti, the living force of creation, born to complete the great yogi. Knowing his detachment, Parvati undertook intense penance to draw his attention, not with charm, but with pure devotion. She fasted, meditated, and endured the elements until Shiva opened his eyes to her presence. In her, he saw the missing half of existence. Their union was more than marriage. It was the meeting of consciousness and energy, of stillness and action. Together, they gave rise to the rhythm of the universe. Shiva was the still mountain, Parvati the flowing river. When joined, their love became creation itself, and their balance a lesson to gods and mortals alike. Though known for peace, Shiva is not distant from the world's struggles. When the gods and demons churned the ocean to extract the nectar of immortality, a deadly poison surfaced. Neither gods nor demons could stop its spread. Shiva alone stepped forward. Without hesitation, he drank the poison to save creation. It did not harm him, for Parvati gently held his throat, trapping the venom there. His neck turned blue, and he became Nilkanth, the blue-throated one. This was not an act of pride, but of service. Shiva showed that true power lies in sacrifice, that to protect the world, one must sometimes suffer quietly. He became a guardian through selflessness, his pain embraced with silence, his love vast enough to hold the cosmos together. Among his many forms, Shiva dances, not just for joy, but as a divine act. His Tandava is not ordinary movement. It is creation, preservation, and destruction in a single rhythm. Flames surround him, his hair whips through the air, and the drum he holds beats the sound of time. One foot rises, the other crushes ignorance. His dance is both storm and stillness, joy and fury. Within its wild motion lies perfect balance. Witnessing the Tandava is to remember that life is constant change. The dance teaches that beginnings and endings are not enemies, but partners. Where there is motion, there is also the silent center, that deep, immovable truth. In Shiva's dance, the universe spins, yet at the heart of it all, there is peace. Shiva's compassion is as powerful as his fury. The story of young Markandeya reveals his gentleness. Destined to die at 16, the boy sought refuge in Shiva, embracing the sacred linga with unwavering faith. When Yama, the god of death, came to claim him, his noose landed around the linga instead. Shiva, emerging in wrath, struck down Yama and granted the boy eternal life. In doing so, he showed that devotion can rewrite fate. Death, the most certain truth, bowed before love and faith. Shiva is not just a god of endings. He is the guardian of those who surrender completely. He does not protect out of duty, but out of connection. To love Shiva is to touch something deeper than life, more lasting than death. Perhaps his most symbolic form is Ardhanarishvara, the half-man, half-woman deity. Split down the middle, one side is Shiva, the other Parvati. Together, they represent unity, not duality. In this form, he teaches that wholeness is not found in one nature alone, but in balance. Masculine and feminine, stillness and motion, logic and emotion, each needs the other. This image defies separation, reminding all that divine energy flows through all beings, regardless of gender or form. It is not a question of parts, but of presence. Within each of us is a Shiva and a Shakti, a silent knower and a vibrant doer. Ardhanarishvara is a reminder that peace comes not from domination, but from harmony, the great dance of unity living in a single form. Worship of Shiva doesn't always require temples or rituals. In the forests of southern India, a tribal hunter named Kanapa offered devotion in his own way. He brought raw meat, carried water in his mouth, and laid leaves at the feet of the linga. When he saw blood flowing from the linga's eye, he gave his own without hesitation. As he reached to pluck his second eye, Shiva appeared, halting him and granting him moksha. Kanapa knew no scriptures, no rituals, but his heart was pure. This story shows that Shiva values sincerity over tradition. He looks not at ritual, but at love, not at purity of form, but of intention. For those who approach him with truth in their hearts, Shiva is never far away. Grief, too, finds a home in Shiva. When his beloved Sati died in flames after her father's insult, Shiva was overcome. He carried her body through the universe, lost in sorrow. From this act of mourning came the Shakti Pithas, sacred sites born from her fallen parts. In his grief, Shiva did not hide his pain. He let it shape creation. The gods trembled, the skies darkened, and time itself seemed to slow. But even then, Shiva was teaching. He showed that love brings pain, and pain has power. That loss is part of the divine dance. He is not untouched by emotion. He is flooded by it, yet never ruled. Even in mourning, Shiva remains truth. And in his sorrow, he makes the world sacred again. The linga, central to Shiva's worship, is more than a stone. It is the formless expressed in form, the mystery of being captured in shape. It represents both energy and stillness. both seed and silence. Worshippers pour milk, water, and flowers over it, not to please a god, but to awaken the divine within. The linga is a mirror, a gateway, a symbol that says, beyond name and shape, beyond thought and ego, lies truth. It is not Shiva's body, it is his essence. It calls not for grandeur, but for surrender. To kneel before is to acknowledge that we do not control the cosmos, we participate in it. The linga stands unmoved, just as Shiva does in the heart of the meditating soul. Destruction, though feared, is Shiva's gift. He reminds us that endings are not punishment, they are release. Old identities, broken dreams, painful attachments, all must dissolve so new life can emerge. Like fire that clears the forest for new growth, Shiva burns what no longer serves us. He is the purifier, not through violence, but through truth. His destruction is the path to liberation, for in letting go we find our true self. He challenges us to stop clinging, to face impermanence, and to awaken. He walks not among the rich and proud, but among ashes and silence, in cemeteries and mountain caves. To follow him is to be brave. To walk with Shiva is to lose the false self and find freedom beyond fear. Atop Mount Kailash, Shiva resides, not in splendor, but in stillness. The mountain is sacred not because of its height, but because of what it represents. Its peak, hidden in clouds, is the silent witness of all things. Pilgrims walk its base in reverence, never daring to climb. For Shiva, the highest is not conquered, it is honored. Kailash mirrors the soul's journey, rising from earth toward sky, from noise into silence. Shiva waits there, not demanding worship but offering space. In his presence, there is no need to pretend. He sees through masks and honors truth. He is the quiet companion, the eternal question, and the final answer. In the hush of snow and stone, in the echo of nothingness, Shiva is always listening. So who is Shiva? He is the fire in your transformation, the silence in your meditation, the strength in your letting go. He is not found in wealth or conquest, but in the still place beneath the noise. He dances, he grieves, he gives and destroys. He walks with beggars and kings alike. He is not light or dark, but the space where both dissolve. In his name, seekers find peace, rebels find refuge, and the broken find wholeness. To know Shiva is not to define him, it is to feel him. He is beyond belief, beyond name, yet close as breath. He is the emptiness that holds all things. And in the end, when the world grows quiet and all things fall away, Shiva remains. The birth of Shiva. In the beginning, before time had a name and space had form, there was only stillness. It was not a silence of absence, but of perfect potential. The cosmos slept, waiting to awaken. There were no gods, no stars, no songs, only the unmanifest, the great undivided consciousness that lay beyond creation. It pulsed, timeless and pure, without face or motion. From this source, all things would eventually arise. This origin is beyond imagining, beyond symbols, beyond the mind's reach. But within that vast stillness, something began to stir. Not desire, but purpose. The need for creation had not yet awakened, but its seeds trembled at the edges of the void. It is from this boundless field of being that Shiva, the eternal, would one day take form. Though Shiva is eternal, untouched by time or decay, many stories speak of his arrival into awareness, not as a birth in the human sense, but as a rising of force from silence. In one tradition, the first ripple in the cosmic stillness created Brahma, the god of creation. Eager to bring form to the formless, Brahma opened his eyes and shaped the worlds. He made sky and sea, fire and earth, and filled them with life. Yet as he gazed upon his own creation, Brahma realized something was missing. His universe had form, but no rhythm. It moved, but it had no anchor. Without balance, his creation would spin out of harmony. So he turned inward, seeking guidance from the very source that had birthed him. And from his forehead, in a flash of flame and thunder, emerged a force like none other. That force was Shiva, appearing not as a child, but as a complete being, silent and blazing, with eyes that saw through time. His body shone like molten fire, a serpent coiled around his neck, and his gaze was like still water hiding infinite depths. Brahma stepped back in awe. Here was not a creation of his own, but a revelation of something older, something more elemental. Shiva did not speak. He did not need to. His presence alone silenced the stars. This was not the kind of god who built worlds or composed hymns. He was the balance of all things, the still point around which the universe would spin. Brahma understood then that he had summoned not a helper, but the very principle of destruction and transcendence. Shiva's birth from Brahma's forehead was not accidental. It came from thought, from deep awareness, from the understanding that every act of creation requires its opposite. What is born must also pass. What grows must fall. Brahma, as the creator, realized that for his work to have meaning, something must hold it in check. Shiva was that force. His third eye, blazing with unfiltered insight, could pierce illusion and dissolve ego. He was not born to preserve Brahma's creation, but to keep it honest. Shiva would walk the boundary between form and emptiness, reminding gods and mortals alike that all things return to the source. He was not cruel. He was not kind. He was beyond duality, and in that space beyond opposites, he became the most necessary god of all. Not all tales agree that Shiva came from Brahma. Some say he was never created at all, that he existed before all forms, before Brahma, Vishnu, or any other divine being. They say Shiva sat in eternal meditation, beyond time, before even the idea of time had formed. He was self-born, self-aware, infinite in scope and stillness. When the cosmos awoke and began to breathe, it merely echoed the rhythm of his eternal breath. In this vision, Shiva is not a god among others, but the primal presence from which all divinity unfolds. He is not the result of a process, but the silent witness to all processes. When Brahma created the worlds, when Vishnu took his avatars, when demons rose and fell, Shiva remained unchanged, watching, unmoving, always present. In some versions, the universe itself was once shrouded in darkness and confusion. The gods were unsure of their place. They quarreled and questioned. Who was the greatest? Who had the right to rule? To settle their dispute, a pillar of light blazed through the sky, endless, without top or bottom. It appeared suddenly, and all things paused. Brahma and Vishnu, wanting to understand, took forms to seek its ends. Brahma flew upward as a swan, while Vishnu dived downward as a boar. They searched for countless ages, but found no boundary. Defeated, they returned. In that moment, the light opened like a great flower, and from it stepped Shiva, calm, complete, eternal. He was the source of the light, the mystery that humbled all pride. Without speaking, he revealed that truth needs no declaration. These stories, while different in their details, point to a singular truth. Shiva is not born. He manifests. He arises not through need, but through necessity. When balance falters, when pride swells, when illusion thickens, Shiva appears. He is the cosmic response to imbalance. He comes to dissolve the structures that no longer serve life's unfolding. In this way, his so-called birth is more like a flame leaping from still embers, or a voice echoing from silence. He is not created. He reveals himself. And in doing so, he brings clarity. He burns away confusion. He shows the gods their limits and mortals their true nature. When he enters the world, time pauses, because in his gaze, all illusions fade and only the real remains. Shiva's earliest form was without name or feature. He had no dwelling, no lineage, no ornaments. He wore the sky as his garment, the stars as his companions. He sat unmoving for eons, his eyes turned inward, lost in the dance of formless truth. The sages who glimpsed him in deep meditation called him Rudra, the roarer, the storm that breaks silence. Others called him Mahadeva, the great god. But even these names fell short. For how can one name that which is beyond names? How can a sound capture stillness? So the wise called him simply Shiva, the auspicious one, not because he was always gentle, but because in his presence all things return to their rightful place. He brings harmony not by pleasing the world, but by stripping it of falsehood. As time went on, Shiva took on forms more familiar. He became the yogi seated upon Mount Kailash, his hair tangled with the river Ganga, his eyes half closed in meditation. He wore a crescent moon on his brow and a snake across his shoulders. He held a drum whose beat measured time, and a trident whose points marked creation, preservation, and destruction. Yet even in these forms, he remained mystery. He laughed with ghosts, danced in cremation grounds, and blessed the forgotten. He was both terrifying and tender. To some, he gave boons. To others, he gave release. But always, he gave truth. No seeker ever left him unchanged. His presence was a mirror, reflecting not the face one wore, but the soul beneath. That was his gift, to reveal what lies hidden. Those who feared him called him Destroyer. They saw his third eye and thought of fire, of endings, of death. But those who loved him saw more. They saw that his destruction was not rage, but mercy. He did not destroy out of malice, but to make room. Like a sculptor removing stone to reveal the form within, Shiva chipped away at the ego, at illusion, at the layers that trapped the soul. In his fire was freedom. In his silence was song. He did not crave temples or offerings. What he asked for was surrender. A heart that let go. a mind that stopped clinging. And for those who gave it, he gave himself, not as a deity above, but as presence within. He was not far away, he was the breath. And so, the story of Shiva's birth is not one moment, not one tale. It is a ripple in every myth, a thread in every time. He is born whenever truth is remembered, whenever silence is heard, whenever the soul awakens. Whether he rises from Brahma's brow or emerges from a pillar of light, Shiva does not come to conquer, but to clarify. He is not bound by heavens or hells. He walks across them both with equal ease. His home is the cave of the heart, the stillness behind thought, the flame that needs no fuel. He waits, not for praise, but for honesty. And when the seeker is ready, when the masks fall away, when the questions become still, then Shiva appears, not outside, but within. Marriage to Parvati. In the early days of the world, when mountains still held whispers of the gods and rivers carried memory instead of names, there lived a goddess named Parvati. She was the daughter of the mountain king Himavan and his queen Mena. From birth, she was unlike other children, serene in her gaze, radiant in her silence. The sages who came to bless her saw in her not just beauty but a power that stretched beyond lifetimes. She was Shakti, the eternal force of the universe, reborn in human form. Her heart, though still young, carried a knowing. In quiet moments, she would close her eyes and see a figure in meditation, wrapped in silence and fire. Though she did not yet speak it, she already loved Shiva. Parvati's love was not sudden. It had lived in her soul long before her birth. She had once been Sati, Shiva's first consort, who gave up her life in sorrow after her father insulted her beloved. In that lifetime, Shiva had withdrawn, drowning his pain in solitude, refusing to return to the world. But destiny would not forget. Shakti, the great cosmic energy, could not remain apart from consciousness forever. So she returned, born as Parvati. As she grew, tales of Shiva's greatness filled her ears. How he meditated in icy silence, how he drank poison to save the world, how he lived far from all desires. But she did not fear him. In her heart, there was no doubt. She knew she was born to love him again. Yet Shiva had turned away from the world. Since the death of Sati, he had abandoned all ties. He wandered through forests and mountains, dressed in ash, with snakes as his ornaments, and silence as his companion. He sat on Mount Kailash, unmoved by time, untouched by longing. The gods themselves approached him with caution. Creation continued without him, but it lacked balance. The world was full of energy, yet it had no anchor. Without the union of Shakti and Shiva, nature was wild but aimless. Parvati knew this too. She did not wish to disturb him, but to awaken him, not with noise, but with stillness deeper than his own. Her path would not be through words, but through devotion so pure that even Shiva could not ignore it. Parvati left the comfort of her palace and entered the forest. There, she gave herself to the ancient ways. She renounced food, shelter, and luxury. She sat under the open sky, through heat and rain, through night and hunger. She meditated with her heart set, not on reward, but on union. Animals gathered around her in peace. Trees bowed above her, offering shade. The wind carried her name. Even the gods watched, amazed by her endurance. For years she remained there, unmoving. She became the stillness that matched Shiva's own. Her love was not a yearning, but a truth. She did not chase him. She became the mountain. And in time her silence reached him, not as a cry, but as a steady, unwavering presence in the vastness of his meditation. At first, Shiva did not stir. He had buried his sorrow deep. He had seen love turn to loss, and so he had chosen the freedom of detachment. But the echo of Parvati's penance crept into the corners of his stillness. The winds brought her devotion. The fire recognized her strength. Slowly, the ice around his heart began to melt. Still, he was cautious. Could love ever be free from pain? To test her resolve, Shiva took many forms. In one tale, he disguised himself as a wandering ascetic and visited her, mocking her efforts, calling Shiva a madman who lived among ghosts. But Parvati remained firm. She defended Shiva, not out of pride, but out of knowing. Her words were calm, yet fierce with faith. Shiva, hearing them, smiled. Parvati's devotion was not blind. She knew Shiva's darkness, his wildness, his rage, and she embraced all of it. She did not seek a god to protect her, but a soul to stand beside. Her penance was not a plea for favor. It was a path to equality. The gods, seeing her strength, approached Shiva and reminded him of the balance that only union could bring. At last his heart opened. The fire in him recognized the fire in her. He saw not the girl from the palace, but the goddess he had always known. And so he descended from Kailash, not as a beggar, not as a god, but as himself, naked in truth, wrapped in ash, bringing with him the silence of 1,000 years. When Shiva came to her, the earth trembled in quiet joy. Parvati rose from her meditation, not surprised, but serene. Their eyes met, not for the first time, but once again across lifetimes. There were no grand speeches, no sudden embrace. Their love was not new. It had only returned. The forest around them bloomed. Even the sun softened its gaze. Shiva bowed to her, not as a gesture of submission, but of recognition. She had waited not as one desperate, but as one sure. He took her hand, and in that moment, the universe exhaled. Energy and consciousness had found each other once more. The dance of creation could begin again. Their love was not a merging, but a balancing, of stillness and movement, of knowing and becoming. The marriage of Shiva and Parvati was not just a personal union, but a cosmic event. The heavens rejoiced, the rivers sang, the fire leapt higher, and the stars aligned in celebration. The gods and sages gathered, the mountains swelled with pride. Even creatures of the underworld paused in reverence. Parvati was adorned in gold and silk, yet her truest ornament was her radiance. Shiva came not with riches, but with the gifts of the forest, leaves, ash, and silence. Together they circled the sacred fire, not as man and woman, but as forces eternal. In their vows, they spoke of more than love. They spoke of duty, of devotion, of balance. Each promised to uphold the other, not by clinging, but by supporting. Their union became a lesson for all creation. After their marriage, Parvati journeyed with Shiva to Mount Kailash. There, in the icy reaches of the north, they lived not as rulers but as companions. Their home was simple, yet filled with beauty. The snow never chilled their love. Parvati brought warmth, stories, and laughter to Shiva's austere world. He, in turn, taught her the depths of silence, the power of meditation. Together, they explored the mysteries of the universe, not by traveling outward, but by turning inward. From their union came wisdom. From their love came life. It is said that even the gods would visit Kailash not to ask for blessings, but simply to witness the peace that flowed between them. It was not a peace without challenge, but a peace that embraced it. Over time, Parvati and Shiva became the parents of divine children, Ganesha and Kartikeya, each born with purpose, each carrying aspects of their essence. But more than their children, their greatest creation was the example they set. They showed that true union does not erase difference. Shiva remained the wild ascetic, Parvati the nurturing goddess. They did not become one by becoming the same. They became one by holding space for each other's truth. In laughter and silence, in creation and rest, they showed what love could be when stripped of possession. Their marriage was not a prize won through effort, but a recognition of eternal belonging. Shakti and Shiva were not two beings. They were one truth, expressed through dual form. Even today, their story lives on in every sacred space. In temples across the world, Shiva is rarely worshipped without Parvati. Her presence completes his presence anchors hers. In the cosmic dance of Nataraja, Parvati's grace moves through every gesture. In every shrine where the linga stands, it is her energy that surrounds it. Their union is not frozen in myth. It is alive in every heartbeat that longs for balance. For those who seek not just devotion, but transformation, their love is a map. It shows that strength can be soft, that stillness can be powerful, that love, when true, does not bind. It liberates. Their marriage is not a tale of conquest, but of return, not of possession, but of recognition. Parvati's penance, Shiva's awakening, their union. It is a journey all souls take in some form. The longing to unite energy with purpose, motion with stillness, desire with wisdom. In every seeker is a Parvati, willing to walk into the forest for truth. In every silent moment is a Shiva, waiting to be stirred by devotion. Their marriage is not just a story of gods. It is a mirror, reflecting the inner path of balance. To love as they did is not to escape the world, but to embrace it fully, with its fire, its shadows, its silence, and its light. And in that embrace, something timeless is born again. The dance begins, creation stirs, and once more, the universe becomes whole. The birth of Ganesha. In the cool shade of Mount Kailash, where the snow melts into streams of crystal water, and the silence is deeper than thought, Parvati lived with her husband Shiva in the quiet rhythms of divine life. While Shiva often wandered through inner and outer worlds in deep meditation, Parvati stayed within the sacred mountain dwelling. One day, feeling the need for privacy and sacred space, Parvati decided to bathe in solitude. But as she looked around, she saw no one to guard the entrance of her chamber. She desired someone of her own, someone loyal and loving, not born of Shiva's essence, but hers alone. And so, from the dust of her body and the oils of the bath, she created a boy. With care, Parvati shaped the form of a child, sturdy, beautiful, and full of life. She breathed into him her power, her tenderness, and her divine will. The boy opened his eyes, blinking at the world with a bright curiosity. Parvati smiled, placing her hand on his head, and named him Ganesha. She told him that he was her son, born of her will, and gave him a simple duty: to stand guard at the entrance of her chambers and allow no one inside. Ganesha nodded with pride and joy. Though he had only just come into being, his heart was full of love for the one who had given him life. He stood tall and firm, prepared to fulfill his mother's command with unwavering devotion. Not long after, Shiva returned from his meditations. His presence was as vast as the sky, ash-covered, fierce, and radiant. He walked toward his abode, unaware of what had changed in his absence. As he approached the entrance to Parvati's chamber, the boy stepped forward and raised his hand. "You may not enter," Ganesha said, his voice steady. Shiva paused, surprised. "Who are you to block my path?" he asked. Ganesha stood his ground. "I am the son of Parvati, and I follow her command." Shiva's eyes narrowed. He had never heard of such a son. Anger flared in him, not from ego, but from confusion. Who was this child? What trick was this? Yet Ganesha would not move. The gate was closed. The gods and attendants nearby tried to intervene, sensing the tension. They begged Ganesha to let Shiva pass, explaining that this was the great Mahadeva, Lord of Kailash. But Ganesha would not break his word. He had been given a duty by his mother, and he would not betray it, not even for a god. The air grew heavy. Shiva, known for his temper as much as his tranquility, warned the boy one final time. But Ganesha did not waver. In a flash of divine fury, Shiva raised his trident and struck. The weapon moved with cosmic power, severing Ganesha's head in a single motion. Silence fell. The body crumpled to the ground. The wind held its breath, and inside her chamber, Parvati felt a sudden stillness pierce her heart. Parvati emerged and saw her son lying lifeless. Her scream echoed across mountains and through the heavens. She fell to her knees, gathering the still warm body into her arms. Her sorrow was not a mortal grief. It was the anguish of the Divine Mother, the goddess of life, cradling death. Her eyes blazed with fury and pain. She turned to Shiva, not as wife, but as Shakti, the power that drives the universe. "You have destroyed my son," she said, her voice low and thunderous. "You have taken what was born of me." Her grief shook the earth. The skies darkened. Rivers trembled. The gods watched in fear, for when Shakti rises in rage, the balance of the world is at risk. Shiva stood in stunned silence. The moment of anger had passed, and clarity returned. He looked at the boy, at Parvati's tears, and at the sorrow he had caused. He realized the depth of the mistake. There had been no threat, no enemy, only a loyal son following his mother's word. Shiva stepped forward, his expression softened by remorse. "What has happened cannot be undone," he said, "but it can be healed." He called upon his attendants and sent them into the forest with a solemn command to find the head of the first living being they encountered, one who faced the north, the direction of wisdom and beginnings. Only then could the boy be returned to life and restored to his mother's arms. The attendants searched through forests and fields until they came upon a mighty elephant, noble and calm, who stood near a riverbank facing north. With reverence, they explained their mission and took the head of the creature, knowing that its sacrifice would give life. They returned to Kailash and placed the elephant's head upon the lifeless body of the boy. Shiva touched the brow of the new form and whispered words older than time. A spark passed from his fingers to the child's heart. The chest rose. Breath returned. Ganesha opened his eyes again, this time with the wisdom of both man and beast. He blinked at the world with innocence and strength, and Parvati held him once more, her sorrow eased by his return. Shiva knelt before the boy and placed his hand on his elephant head. "You are no longer only a guardian," he said. "You are my son too. You are born of Parvati's grace, and reborn through my power. From this moment you shall be known throughout the three worlds. You shall be honored before all others. None shall begin a journey or a prayer without first invoking your name." He blessed Ganesha with wisdom, with compassion, and with a place above many. The gods rejoiced. Parvati's heart calmed. The balance was restored. Ganesha, once a child unknown, had now become a symbol of beginnings, of resilience, and of love born through trial. His elephant face became a sign of overcoming obstacles and seeing beyond illusion. From that day on, Ganesha sat beside his parents in Mount Kailash, not as a child needing protection, but as a deity in his own right. Devotees began to call on him before any undertaking. Artists prayed to him before lifting a brush. Farmers called his name before sowing seeds. Even the gods would not begin ceremonies without invoking his blessing. Ganesha's presence was not just protective, it was opening. He cleared the mind of doubt, the path of blocks, and the heart of fear. Though he bore the mark of a great sorrow, he carried it with grace. His laughter filled Kailash, and his wisdom guided countless seekers. The head that once shocked the world became its most beloved face. Parvati watched her son grow with joy, yet never forgot the path that led to his rebirth. She taught others that devotion means more than obedience. It means standing in one's truth, even when misunderstood. Ganesha became a reminder that duty and love often walk side by side, and that forgiveness can shape the course of destiny. Shiva, too, grew through this tale. He learned that power without awareness can wound, and that healing sometimes begins with humility. Their family, once shaken by tragedy, became a beacon of unity. In the quiet halls of Kailash, stories were told not just of battles and gods, but of a mother's love, a father's regret, and a son's second chance. As the ages passed, the image of Ganesha spread across lands and hearts. He was seen riding a mouse, holding sweets in one hand and a broken tusk in the other. His elephant form was no longer strange, but comforting. He became the god of thresholds, of first steps, of learning and laughter. Children adored him. Scholars revered him. Even those with heavy hearts found light in his presence. For he was born not of grand design, but of intimate love. He came into being from the simple wish of a mother and was reborn through the awakening of a father. In him lived the balance of strength and softness, of seriousness and joy. Ganesha belonged to everyone. So the story of Ganesha's birth is not just about gods and miracles. It is about misunderstanding and forgiveness, about love and courage. It teaches that the roles we are given may change, but the truth of who we are endures. Ganesha was not created to be great. He became great by standing firm, by being true to the one who made him, and by accepting change with grace. His story reminds us that obstacles can become gifts, that wounds can lead to wisdom, and that in the space between destruction and healing, a deeper connection is found. As long as there are beginnings, as long as there is hope, Ganesha will be there, guiding, laughing, and opening the way. The churning of the ocean. In the age before ages, when time moved like breath and gods walked among the stars, a great problem stirred in the heavens. The Devas, celestial beings who upheld order and light, had grown weak. Their powers had faded, their radiance dimmed. The balance of the cosmos began to tilt, and darkness, sensing its chance, began to rise. The Asuras, their eternal rivals, gained strength and challenged the heavens. The Devas sought counsel from Lord Vishnu, the preserver of creation, whose wisdom flowed as deep as time. He listened, thoughtful, then spoke of a solution. To restore balance, the ocean of milk, Kashira Sagara, must be churned. From its depths, divine treasures would emerge, including the nectar of immortality, but the task would not be simple. The Devas could not do it alone. The ocean was vast, heavy with secrets, and filled with ancient power. Vishnu advised them to make peace with the Asuras, just for this task. Though enemies, both sides had a stake in the outcome. The Devas approached the Asuras, speaking not with anger but with strategy. A truce was formed. Together they would churn the ocean, and when the nectar came, both sides would share. The great mountain Mandara was chosen as the churning rod, and the king of serpents, Vasuki, would serve as the rope. The gods pulled from one side, the demons from the other. With chance and effort, the churning began. The sea groaned and swirled, waves crashing like thunder. The dance of effort and desire had begun. But the churning did not bring nectar at once. Before the treasures emerged, something terrible rose from the depths. It was not gold or light, but a thick, black poison. Halahala, it was called. So potent was its presence that even a single drop could burn worlds. It spread across the sky like a shadow, curling into the wind, seeping into light. The Devas fell back in fear. The Asuras screamed. Plants withered. The waters trembled. The poison threatened to dissolve the very fabric of existence. The churning had awakened not only blessings, but curses as well. None knew what to do. The nectar of immortality was still hidden below, but if the halahala spread, there would be no world left to receive it. The gods turned to Vishnu, but he remained still, his gaze deep with knowing. There is only one, he said, who can hold such a force without being destroyed. Only one who can drink death and remain eternal. All eyes turned toward Mount Kailash, toward the one who sat wrapped in silence and ash, the one whose presence held the balance of destruction and peace, Lord Shiva. Without hesitation, the gods traveled to the sacred mountain and bowed before the meditating yogi. They spoke of the churning, of the poison, of the threat to all life. Shiva opened his eyes. In them was neither fear nor surprise. He stood slowly, not in haste, but in purpose. He knew what must be done. Shiva descended from Kailash with calm steps. The sky darkened, not in warning, but in reverence. The earth stilled beneath his feet. When he reached the ocean's edge, the Devas and Asuras stepped aside. The air was thick with halahala, the poison pulsing like a living storm. Shiva looked upon it and raised his hand. Without ceremony, without hesitation, he cupped the poison in his palms and brought it to his lips. The Devas gasped. The Asuras stared. The universe itself seemed to pause. Shiva drank the halahala, taking the death of all things into himself. It burned like stars collapsing, like suns dying, but Shiva did not cry out. His body remained calm, though inside the fire raged. Parvati, his eternal consort, watched with steady eyes. She stepped forward and gently placed her hand on Shiva's throat, halting the poison there. It would not descend into his body, nor would it rise to his mind. It would rest in his throat, bound by her love, her strength. The poison, caught between worlds, turned his neck a deep blue, the color of twilight, of things held in balance. From that day, Shiva was called Nilkanth, the blue-throated one. He had taken in what none could bear, and in doing so, preserved all of creation. The sky brightened once more. The trees stood tall again. The churning could continue, and life would go on, but the world would not forget what it had just seen. Though the poison was stilled, its memory remained sharp. It reminded all beings that power is never gained without price, that creation and destruction dance side by side. Shiva returned to Kailash, not triumphant, but silent. He asked for no praise. He claimed no reward. What he had done was not a feat. It was an act of dharma, of duty beyond pride. The Devas bowed in gratitude. Even the Asuras lowered their heads. Shiva had not saved one side or the other. He had saved all. And in doing so, he reminded them that the greatest strength lies not in conquest, but in sacrifice. The churning continued, and treasures began to emerge from the ocean's depths. But the true gift had already been given. One by one, the treasures rose: Kamadhenu, the wish-granting cow; the celestial horse Uchaishravas; the goddess Lakshmi, radiant and full of grace, and many more. Each one had its place in the order of things, but the final reward was the nectar of immortality, Amrita, glowing with the promise of eternal life. As it surfaced, desire reignited. The Asuras reached for it, eager, shouting claims. The Devas stood ready, protective. A storm of conflict brewed once more. But Vishnu, ever wise, intervened. Taking the form of the enchantress Mohini, he distracted the Asuras with beauty and charm, distributing the nectar only among the Devas. The balance was restored, but the lessons of the churning remained etched in every soul. For before nectar, there had been poison, and it had been Shiva who bore it. In the legends told since, children listen with wide eyes to the tale of Samudra Manthan. They learn that sometimes, what we seek most lies deep below layers of struggle. That even the gods must churn, must strive, must face the unexpected. And above all, they learn of Shiva, who stepped forward when others stepped back, who drank pain so others could taste peace, who became Nilkanth not for glory, but for love. His blue throat became a symbol of silent strength, of the ability to hold darkness without letting it spread. In temples and homes, prayers rise to him not only for power, but for the courage to face what must be faced, to hold what must be held. Even today, the image of Shiva with his blue throat reminds humanity of the cost of preservation. That leadership often means bearing what others cannot. That silence is not weakness, and that stillness can contain storms. The churning of the ocean was not just a battle of gods and demons. It was a reflection of inner struggle, of minds and hearts that seek clarity. The poison that rose was not just halahala, but fear, pride, and confusion. And Shiva showed that with love, awareness, and calm, even the darkest forces can be contained. He did not destroy the poison. He accepted it, and in doing so taught that transformation sometimes means carrying, not casting away. In the forests, by riverbanks, and upon mountain peaks, yogis meditate upon Nilkanth. They invoke his strength, not for outward power, but for inner peace. They chant his name in stillness, seeking to embody the grace with which he drank the world's pain. Mothers tell their children that when life grows bitter, when hardship rises like smoke, one can call on Shiva, not to escape it, but to carry it with dignity. His name is whispered before new journeys, before great decisions. For he, who held the poison and did not falter, is the guardian of courage, the protector of balance, and the friend of those who walk hard paths with open hearts. And so, the story of Samudra Manthan is told not just in sacred texts, but in the beat of drums, the flicker of lamps, and the quiet spaces between breaths. It is remembered in every act of patience, every sacrifice made without demand, every silent vow kept when no one is watching. The churning never truly ends. In every age, in every heart, the ocean swirls again. Desire, effort, darkness, light. And always, somewhere in that vast turning, Shiva watches. Not above, not apart, but among, waiting, not to intervene, but to remind. That when poison rises, it can be held. That when fear grows, it can be met with peace. That in the heart of stillness, the universe finds its breath again. Shiva and the demon Andhaka. In a time beyond counting, when the world breathed in rhythms both divine and dark, there arose a demon named Andhaka. Born of shadow, he was powerful, cunning, and shrouded in illusion. Andhaka was not an ordinary being. He had been granted a fearsome boon. Through years of penance and fierce discipline, he won the favor of Brahma, who granted him near invincibility. Andhaka could not be killed except under a single condition. He would only die if he lusted after his own mother. Seemingly immune to fate, he believed himself beyond downfall. For a while he used his strength to conquer lands, overpower sages, and shake the heavens. The gods grew restless. The skies darkened. Something ancient and fierce was beginning to stir. But destiny, silent and precise, does not forget. As Andhaka's power grew, so too did his arrogance. One day, he set his sights on Mount Kailash, the sacred home of Shiva and Parvati. He had heard of Parvati's beauty, her strength, her luminous presence. Blinded by desire and delusion, Andhaka resolved to claim her. He marched toward Kailash, with an army of demons, his mind ablaze with ambition. He did not know, could not know, that Parvati was no ordinary goddess. She was Shakti, the primal energy, the consort of Shiva, the soul of the universe. And worse still, though he did not remember, she was his own mother. The curse, sealed long ago, waited quietly for this moment to unfold. As Andhaka approached, the very earth recoiled. Trees trembled, winds turned sharp. Parvati, sensing the disturbance, looked to Shiva, who sat in deep meditation. With a glance, she awakened him. Shiva opened his eyes, and the air stilled. He stood, tall and silent, wearing the ash of cremation grounds and the strength of 1,000 storms. Without a word, he lifted his trident and stepped into the world below. The demons met him with thunderous roars, their weapons raised, their eyes filled with fire. But Shiva did not flinch. His presence alone split the sky. The battle began not with speeches, but with silence shattered by force. Thunder rolled as gods and demons clashed in a dance as old as creation itself. Andhaka himself came forth, towering and wild, his power bursting from every limb. He fought with fury, summoning illusions and storms, hoping to distract and overpower the Lord of Destruction. But Shiva was not moved by fear or rage. He danced through the chaos with precision, striking with his trident, burning with his third eye. Every blow Shiva dealt was a lesson. Every step he took was an unraveling of pride. Andhaka fell, rose again, multiplied and screamed. But he could not break Shiva's calm. Around them, the battle raged for days. Mountains cracked, rivers boiled, and the heavens shook. Andhaka struck with every weapon he knew, yet Shiva remained the center, the eye of the storm, unmoved, eternal. At last, Shiva raised his trident high and pierced Andhaka's chest. The demon fell to the ground, writhing, coughing blood, yet still alive. For his boon protected him. He could not die unless he truly desired what should have been forbidden. Parvati stepped forward, her gaze fierce as flame. Andhaka looked upon her again, not with wisdom, but with desire. In that moment, the truth burst into his mind like 1,000 suns. She was his mother. Horror clashed with longing, shame with craving. The boon turned upon him. His body, once shielded by magic, now burned from within. The curse had ripened. The condition had been met. Shiva walked forward, his face solemn, and brought his trident down again. This time, there was no return. The demon's body shattered, but his soul did not vanish. In the final moment, as his arrogance melted away and clarity returned, Andhaka fell at Shiva's feet. He wept not in fear, but in repentance. Shiva, ever the destroyer and transformer, did not respond with cruelty. Instead, he offered release. He granted Andhaka not punishment, but redemption. The demon's soul was purified and given a place among Shiva's own attendants, the Ganas. From demon to devotee, from darkness to light, Andhaka found peace at last. The battle ended not only in death, but in transformation. For Shiva, destruction is never the end. It is the path to truth, the return to balance. Where others see an ending, he sees the beginning of freedom. The gods rejoiced, the earth quieted, and the skies cleared. Parvati stood beside Shiva, her strength equal to his, her presence the calm after the storm. Together they returned to Kailash, not as victors, but as guardians. The tale of Andhaka was whispered through the mountains, across temples, and into the dreams of those who dared to confront their own inner shadows. Children learned that arrogance blinds, that desire untamed becomes poison, and that even in great error, redemption can be found. Shiva, with his trident and third eye, was not merely the destroyer, he was the teacher. And Parvati, who held her ground with dignity, was not merely the consort, she was the mirror of power, revealing what lies beneath illusion. In the caves of ancient forests, sages meditate upon this story. They do not fear Andhaka, for they know he lives within all. Whenever ego rises, whenever craving clouds the heart, whenever the sacred is forgotten in pursuit of the self, they chant Shiva's name not to praise a god above, but to awaken the protector within. Shiva, who slays demons with fire, also slays ignorance with light. Andhaka's fall was not just a tale of war, it was a lesson carved into the bones of time. That which forgets its source must one day return. That which seeks wrongly must one day kneel, and in that kneeling something eternal is remembered. In Shiva's gaze, even a demon can become pure again. On quiet nights in the high reaches of the Himalayas, when the wind carries the scent of firewood and the stars burn close, one can almost hear the distant echo of that battle. It is not a sound of violence, but of transformation. A reminder that fury has its place when justice must awaken. That truth must sometimes wear the mask of wrath to tear through darkness. But always, beneath the storm, there is silence. And within Shiva, that silence waits. Parvati lights the flame beside him. Nandi stands watch. And the cosmos, balanced once more, breathes in the peace of protection. The story ends, not with sorrow or triumph, but with the steady heartbeat of the mountain. Eternal, present, free. Tripurantaka, the destroyer of the three cities. In the time when the gods still roamed the worlds, and the balance between light and darkness was delicately held, there arose three mighty demons, Taraka's sons, Tarakaksha, Vidyanmali, and Kamalaksha. These were no ordinary asuras. Through intense penance and fierce devotion, they earned the favor of Brahma himself. When he appeared before them, glowing with the fire of creation, they made a bold request. They asked for three indestructible cities, Tripura, one made of gold, one of silver, and one of iron. The cities would float across the three worlds, the heavens, the earth, and the skies between. These fortresses would never align except once every 1,000 years. Only at that precise moment could they be destroyed, and only by a single arrow. Brahma, bound by the laws of his own promise, granted the boon. The demons rejoiced. With their power secured in the form of these invincible cities, they set about building a new order, one where the gods were pushed aside. As the golden city drifted across the heavens, the silver city shimmered across the earth, and the iron fortress loomed between them. Their influence grew. The people were drawn to their grandeur. The asuras, intoxicated by might, turned away from the path of truth. Their cities became strongholds of pride, illusion, and ignorance. They began to mock the devas, disturb sages in meditation, and sow disorder across the realms. What had begun with discipline now festered with arrogance. The gods watched helplessly, knowing the cities were still protected by Brahma's boon. In their desperation, the gods turned to Vishnu. He listened to their plea and nodded gravely. "Only one can end this," he said, "and the moment is near. But even he must wait for the cities to align." That one, of course, was Shiva, the destroyer, the transformer, the eternal balance between power and peace. The gods journeyed to Mount Kailash and bowed before him. Shiva sat in still meditation, surrounded by silence and sky. When they explained the rise of the three cities and the suffering they had caused, Shiva opened his eyes. He did not rise in anger, nor speak of vengeance. He simply said, "When the time comes, I will do what must be done." His voice was steady, certain. The gods felt both awe and relief. As centuries passed, the demons celebrated. They believed themselves untouchable. They mocked Dharma, disrupted sacrifices, and declared themselves masters of the universe. The three cities became mirrors of human folly: gold for ego, silver for illusion, iron for ignorance. Each city flourished in outward wealth but rotted in spirit. And yet Shiva waited, for he knew that destruction without the right moment is not clarity but chaos. At last, the appointed time came. The three cities aligned for a brief instant, forming a single line across the cosmos. It was the moment predicted, the only instant when the cities could be struck down together. The gods gathered, the wind hushed, and the stars held their breath. Shiva rose, preparing for a war that would last only a moment. But this was not a war of many weapons. Shiva chose a chariot built not from wood or metal, but from the very elements. The earth formed its wheels. The sky became its roof. The sun and moon served as its eyes. Brahma himself stood as the charioteer. Vishnu became the arrow. The Mount Meru formed the bow. Every element, every god, every force in the universe took its place in this single act. It was not just an arrow. It was the essence of all creation, ready to dissolve illusion. As Shiva stood upon the cosmic chariot, bow drawn, he was not just the destroyer of cities. He was the remover of veils, the breaker of pride, the one who sees through shadow. He waited for the exact alignment, that fleeting second, when all three cities formed a single line. The demons laughed in their towers, still confident in their protection. They had forgotten humility, forgotten that time waits for none. As the moment arrived, Shiva drew the bow and released the arrow. It flew not with sound, but with silence, deeper than any speech. The missile passed through the skies, through the hearts of the worlds, and in a blink the three cities burst into flame. Gold melted, silver shattered, iron fell to dust. There was no scream, no roar, only stillness. The illusions collapsed. The pride dissolved. The darkness that had wrapped itself in grandeur was gone. All that remained was space, clean and clear. The gods cheered. Light returned to the skies. The sages resumed their prayers. Dharma, once bruised, stood upright again. Shiva lowered his bow, not in triumph, but in quiet. He had done what needed to be done, nothing more. He looked not at the wreckage, but at the stillness beyond it. For him, it was never about vengeance. It was about clarity. The cities had become prisons for the soul, and their fall was liberation. Shiva returned to Kailash, to his mountain, his meditations, his eternal solitude. The Devas offered praise, flowers, hymns, but Shiva remained untouched. Praise and scorn meant the same to him. He had no desire for reward. His work was the balance, and it had been restored. In the centuries that followed, the tale of Tripurantaka was passed down from teacher to student, from elder to child. It was not told as a story of war, but of awakening. The three cities were remembered not only as external places, but as symbols within every being. The golden city was ego, the silver, illusion, and the iron, ignorance. Together they formed a prison for the spirit, and only when aligned, when the self becomes full of pride, distracted by falsehood, and closed to truth, does the true destruction become necessary. Shiva's arrow was not fire alone, it was awareness. The chariot was not for battle, it was the order of all things moving in unity. The tale reminded all who heard it that even destruction in the hands of truth becomes an act of grace. Sages in forests carved the tale into stone. Artists painted it on temple walls. The image of Shiva as Tripurantaka, bow in hand, standing calm in the midst of cosmic stillness, became a symbol not of wrath, but of vision. The story was not a threat. It was an invitation to see within oneself the three cities, to recognize the rise of pride, the pull of illusion, the fog of ignorance, and to remember that Shiva waits not only on mountaintops but within every soul, holding the arrow of clarity, ready to release it when we are ready to let go. He does not rush. He does not force. But when called, when truly called, he answers, not with violence, but with liberation. And so the title Tripurantaka was given to Shiva, the destroyer of the triple cities. But it was more than a name. It was a reminder that in the heart of destruction lies the seed of truth, that not all falling is loss, that some walls must break for the soul to breathe again. In temples and hearts his story endures. Chanted in the early morning, whispered at dusk, carried on the winds of mountains, it returns to us again and again. For the cities may rise within us many times, but so too does the archer, so too does the stillness, and with every breath, we are given the chance to see, to surrender, and to be made whole again. The dance of destruction, Tandava. In the great stillness before the beginning and after the end, there is movement. It does not rush, it does not falter, yet it pulses through all things. This movement is not chaos, it is rhythm. And at the center of this eternal beat stands Shiva, the Lord of time, of space, of dissolution, and rebirth. Though he often sits in meditation, wrapped in the silence of the cosmos, there comes a moment when stillness itself gives way to motion, when the balance between creation and destruction must tilt and reset. In that moment, Shiva rises. His eyes open, his limbs unfurl, and the universe begins to tremble, not from fear, but from recognition. For this is the Tandava, the dance of destruction and regeneration. The Tandava is not born of rage, it is born of necessity. When the weight of the world grows too heavy, when the patterns of life become tangled with illusion, it is Shiva who moves to untangle them, not with speeches or sword, but with dance. His feet strike the ground like thunder, each step rippling through galaxies. His hair whips through the air, unleashing winds. The crescent moon upon his brow gleams, and the Ganga, the holy river, swirls in his locks. Fire flows from his third eye. The Damaru, the drum he holds, beats the rhythm of existence. It is a sound that came before words. It is a sound that speaks not to ears, but to time itself. In this dance, the universe spins, not in disorder, but in perfect alignment. Each movement of Shiva is a law, a truth, a command. His left hand lifts in grace, his right foot presses down the demon of ignorance. Around him, stars collapse and are reborn. Mountains crumble and oceans rise. Time bends, reshaping itself with every gesture. And yet, at the heart of this furious dance, there is calm. A stillness, deeper than silence. For the Tandava is not destruction for its own sake, it is renewal. Just as the forest must burn for new life to grow, so too must the world fall to rise again. Shiva does not destroy to end, he destroys so that something greater can begin. Long ago, when pride filled the hearts of ancient sages in the Dwarkavana forest, they believed their rituals and knowledge made them supreme. They worshipped order, yet lacked insight. They honored gods, but forgot humility. Shiva, seeing the growing illusion, entered their forest, not as a king, but as a naked ascetic. His body was smeared with ash, his presence unsettling and radiant. The sages were outraged. Their wives, however, felt drawn to him, not by desire, but by the magnetism of pure truth. Enraged, the sages cursed him, conjuring beasts and weapons with sacred chants. A tiger leapt from the fire. Shiva skinned it and wore its pelt. Serpents attacked. He adorned them like ornaments. They summoned a fierce dwarf demon. Shiva crushed it beneath his foot. Then he began to dance. There, in the heart of the forest, before those who thought themselves powerful, Shiva danced the Tandava. The earth cracked. The sky turned crimson. Trees wept sap-like tears. Every step was both a rebuke and a blessing. The sages fell to their knees, their arrogance broken by the rhythm of divine motion. In his dance, Shiva did not punish them, he awakened them. Their rituals had become hollow, their wisdom brittle. Through the Tandava, he showed them the living truth behind the symbols they had forgotten. The forest became a temple. The fire became sacred. And the dance, wild and radiant, revealed the true face of divinity, not fixed, not still, but ever moving, ever unfolding. The image of Nataraja, Shiva, as the Lord of Dance, was born from this revelation. In one hand he holds the drum, from which all creation emerges. In another he holds fire, into which all creation dissolves. One hand offers refuge, the other points to the lifted foot, the path of liberation. Beneath his foot lies Apasmara, the dwarf of ignorance, crushed but not killed, for ignorance never vanishes entirely. It is kept in check by awareness. Around Shiva, a ring of flames forms a circle, representing the cycles of birth and death, creation and dissolution. Yet within the circle, Shiva remains centered. This is the heart of the Tandava, motion held by stillness, change embraced within peace. The Tandava is not only cosmic, it is personal. Within each being there is a rhythm, a rise and fall, a dance of thought and silence, joy and sorrow, birth and loss. When Shiva dances, he dances within us. His fire burns away our attachments. His foot presses down our illusions. His hand offers release. Those who meditate upon Nataraja do not do so for spectacle, but for surrender. To watch Shiva dance is to remember that we too are part of that rhythm, that endings are beginnings, that falling is flying in disguise, that destruction, when embraced, becomes a path to clarity. The Tandava does not promise comfort, it promises truth. And from truth comes freedom. It is said that when Shiva performs the final Tandava, the world will dissolve into fire and silence, only to be born anew. But even now, in lesser moments, he dances. He dances in the falling of leaves, in the tides of oceans, in the breath of those who awaken to their true self, in fire rituals and storms, in the pulse of drums and the stillness of meditation. The Tandava moves. It does not ask for belief, it asks for presence, for attention, to feel the ground beneath your feet, to hear the rhythm behind your thoughts, to sense that behind all change there is something constant, and that something is Shiva, dancing still, endlessly, in love with creation. One night, Parvati watched Shiva dance. She did not fear the fire or the thunder. She understood the grace within his fury. As he moved, the universe shimmered around them. Parvati stepped forward and matched his steps, not as a follower but as Shakti, the force behind his form. Together they danced, not as two but as one. The Tandava met the Lasya, her gentle counterpart, and from that union, the world pulsed with new balance. The dance became not only destruction, but beauty. Not only ending, but celebration. For what is the end if not the place where the next note begins? Shiva and Parvati danced through the stars, and the cosmos watched, entranced by the truth of motion. From temples in South India to mountain shrines, the Tandava is honored not with silence alone, but with drums, fire, and movement. Devotees gather to chant his names, to watch dancers embody his steps, to let the rhythm enter their bones. The Tandava is not a tale kept in books. It is a living fire. Children hear the story and learn to let go. Elders hear it and remember what matters most. Those who suffer find in it a strange comfort, that pain too has rhythm, and when embraced, becomes part of a greater flow. In every hand raised to the sky, in every offering of flame, Shiva's dance continues, terrible, beautiful, necessary. So what is Tandava? It is the truth that life is never still. That even in stillness, something moves. That every creation contains its end, and every end its renewal. It is not destruction as punishment. It is destruction as transformation. It is not rage without purpose. It is fire with direction. The Tandava burns not the world, but the illusions that blind it. Shiva, as the dancer, does not seek applause. He seeks awareness. For in awareness there is no fear. In rhythm there is no resistance. And in surrender there is only freedom. The dance goes on, beyond time, beyond form. And if we listen closely, with our whole being, we may hear its steps echoing through our own lives. And when the night is quiet and the stars seem to hold their breath, Some say you can feel it. The faint beat of Shiva's foot, the silent pulse of creation returning to source. The Tandava is not over. It never ends. It is the breath behind every beginning, the fire beneath every transformation. It lives in every choice to let go, in every moment of deep seeing. In Shiva's dance, the universe is not destroyed. It is remade, moment by moment, gesture by gesture. He does not dance alone. He dances with us, through us. In every rising sun, every falling leaf, every beat of your heart, the Tandava lives. And so does Shiva.